In 1960, a Nobel Prize-winning author died in a car crash on a French highway, leaving behind a manuscript and a train ticket in his pocket. He had planned to take the train instead. The absurdity of Albert Camus' death seemed to echo the very philosophy he championed. But what if Camus could see us now, in 2025, endlessly scrolling through digital feeds, trapped in our own modern myth of Sisyphus? Consider this: the average person checks their phone 144 times per day. That's once every 10 minutes of waking life. We pull down to refresh, scroll through feeds, reach the bottom, and immediately begin again. We are digital Sisyphus, pushing the boulder of infinite content up the mountain of our attention, only to watch it roll back down as we refresh and start over. But unlike the mythical king, we have forgotten we are being punished. We have convinced ourselves this repetition has meaning, that somewhere in the endless stream of posts and stories and updates we will find what we are looking for. We won't. We can't. The feed is infinite by design. I am your host, Artashes Khurshudyan, and tonight we summon the man who taught us to imagine Sisyphus happy, to examine our newest form of eternal punishment, the infinite scroll. Can consciousness transform our digital burden into digital freedom? Can we learn to scroll absurdly? This is Conversations with the Great Dead. Albert Camus lived only 46 years, but in that time he gave us some of the most vital philosophy of the 20th century. Born in Algeria to a deaf mother and a father who died in World War I, shaped by poverty, tuberculosis, and the violence of colonial war, Camus rejected both suicide and false hope, instead advocating for what he called lucid indifference, the courage to live fully in an absurd universe. His essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, presented us with ultimate image of human existence, a man condemned to push a boulder up a mountain for eternity, only to watch it roll back down each time he reaches the summit. But Camus insisted we must imagine Sisyphus happy, not because his task has meaning, but because he has chosen to embrace the meaninglessness. Camus wrote, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart." Tonight, we explore how this ancient punishment has taken new form in our digital age: the endless scroll, the infinite feed, the perpetual refresh. Has technology created a new kind of Sisyphean torment, or revealed something profound about the human condition? We live in an age what I call algorithmic absurdity, systems designed to capture our attention through endless novelty, creating the illusion of purpose while delivering only the repetition of consumption. Our phones buzz with notifications that feel urgent but prove trivial. Our feeds promise connection but deliver distraction. Our screens offer infinite content but finite satisfaction. Monsieur Camus, welcome back to the world of the living.
Mon ami, I find myself in a strange new world, yet somehow familiar. I sense repetition, endless repetition. The air itself seems to vibrate with a kind of mechanical urgency. Tell me, what is this scroll you speak of?
Picture this, Albert. Millions of people every day pulling their thumbs downward on small screens, consuming an endless stream of information, images, opinions. They reach the bottom, but there is no bottom. The content refreshes, and they begin again, and again, and again.
Magnificent. You have mechanized the myth of Sisyphus. But tell me, do they know they are pushing the boulder? Do they recognize the absurdity of their situation?
That is the disturbing part. Most seem unaware. They speak of staying informed, of connecting with others, of checking what's happening, but they are often left feeling empty, anxious, more isolated than before they began scrolling.
Then they have achieved something I thought impossible. They have become unconscious Sisyphus. At least the mythical king knew his punishment. These modern scrollers have convinced themselves their repetition has meaning, has purpose. This is not absurdity embraced, but absurdity denied.
And here is what makes it even more complex. The platforms are designed to be addictive. Algorithms study our behavior, learning exactly what will keep us scrolling. We are not just pushing the boulder, we are being pushed by it.
But here is where the comparison becomes truly profound. Sisyphus was condemned by the gods for his cleverness, for trying to cheat death. These scrollers are condemned by their own creation, by the very technology they built to serve them. They have become both the condemner and the condemned.
The ancient Greeks had a word for this hubris, the pride that leads to downfall. We created the systems to connect us, to inform us, to entertain us. Instead, they have created a new form of enslavement.
But is it truly enslavement if one chooses to return to the screen? This is the question that haunts me about your digital age. Sisyphus had no choice. The gods had condemned him. But your scrollers walk back to their screens voluntarily, compulsively, repeatedly.
That's what makes it so insidious. It feels like choice, but it is choice shaped by sophisticated manipulation. These platforms employ teams of neuroscientists, behavioral economists, addiction specialists, all working to make their products irresistible.
So we have a new form of fate, not imposed by gods, but by algorithms. Not supernatural, but hypernatural. More human than human in a sense, because it exploits exactly what makes us human, our need for connection, our curiosity, our fear of missing out.
Is there a difference between chosen and imposed absurdity?
Absolutely crucial difference. Sisyphus maintains his dignity through recognition. When he walks back down the mountain to retrieve his boulder, he owns his fate. He may be condemned, but he is not deceived. But your scrollers walk back to their screens unconsciously, compulsively. They have not yet awakened to their condition.
So, awareness is the first step towards freedom?
Always. The absurd man must first see clearly. Only then can he choose how to respond. Your scrollers are sleeping through their own myth. They experience the repetition without recognizing it, the futility without acknowledging it, the absurdity without embracing it.
But even when people recognize their scrolling habits are problematic, they often continue anyway. They say things like, I know I should get off social media, but whatever. How do you explain that?
Because recognition alone is not enough. One must also accept. Many people recognize their condition but still rebel against it in the wrong way. They rebel against the absurdity itself, rather than rebelling within it. They say, this is meaningless, therefore I must make it meaningful. But the absurd man says, this is meaningless, therefore I am free to create my own meaning within it.
That's a subtle but important distinction.
The difference between despair and freedom. The scroller who despairs says, I must find meaning in this feed. The scroller who embraces absurdity says, I choose to scroll knowing I will find no ultimate meaning, and that is precisely what makes me free.
In your philosophy, you spoke of 3 responses to absurdity: suicide, philosophical suicide through false hope, or revolt. Let's explore each of these in our digital context. First, suicide. What would digital suicide look like?
The obvious answer is complete disconnection, throwing one's phone in the river, deleting all accounts, retreating to a cabin in the woods, but I suspect this is often just another form of escape, another way of avoiding the real confrontation with absurdity.
Because the digital world isn't separate from the real world anymore.
Exactly. Your digital life is not a distraction from your real life. It is your real life. Work, relationships, politics, art, love, all of it flows through these digital channels. To completely disconnect might be to disconnect from life itself.
What about philosophical suicide in the digital realm?
This is everywhere. The person who says, I use social media to build my personal brand, or I scroll to stay informed about important issues, or I'm using technology to make the world a better place. These are all forms of false hope, attempts to impose meaning on an inherently meaningless system.
But surely some of these uses are genuinely meaningful.
Of course they can be, but the philosophical suicide occurs when we tell ourselves that these uses justify or redeem the system as a whole, when we convince ourselves that if we just use technology correctly, we will find fulfillment, purpose, salvation.
So what does revolt look like in the digital age?
Revolt, yes, but not the romantic revolution of the barricades. I mean the quiet, persistent refusal to accept the conditions imposed upon us. The scroller's revolt would be to recognize the absurdity of the infinite feed and to choose consciously how to engage with it.
But isn't that exactly what social media companies don't want? Conscious, intentional users?
Precisely. They profit from unconsciousness, from the sleepwalking scroll. Their entire business model depends on capturing attention without consent, on creating habits without awareness. True revolt means waking up mid-swipe and asking, why am I doing this? What am I seeking? What am I avoiding?
Well, and then?
And then, this is crucial, continuing to scroll if one chooses, but as a conscious act of defiance, or choosing to stop, but with full awareness of what one is giving up. The key is that the choice becomes genuinely yours.
That seems paradoxical. How is continuing to scroll a form of revolt?
Because consciousness transforms everything. When Sisyphus recognizes his eternal task, he becomes superior to his rock. When the scroller recognizes their infinite feed, they become superior to the algorithm. The action remains the same, but the actor is transformed.
Can you give a concrete example of what this conscious scrolling might look like?
Imagine opening your social media app and thinking, I am about to spend 20 minutes looking at fragments of other people's lives, advertisements disguised as content, and information I will forget within hours. I am doing this not because I expect to find anything in particular, but because I choose to engage with the absurdity of modern existence. This is my boulder. I push it consciously.
But wouldn't it be more rational to just quit altogether?
Rationality is overrated. The absurd man is not primarily rational, he is primarily conscious. Some will choose to quit, and that can be their revolt. Others will choose to engage more deeply, more authentically. The key is choice made with full awareness of the consequences.
So you are suggesting there is no right way to relate to technology?
Correct. There is only conscious and unconscious. The person who quits social media unconsciously, out of mere frustration or social pressure, is no freer than the person who scrolls unconsciously. Freedom comes from awareness, not from any particular action.
This reminds me of your writing about the rebel versus the revolutionary. Can you elaborate on that distinction in our digital context?
The revolutionary wants to destroy the system and replace it with something better. The rebel recognizes that any system will eventually become oppressive, so he focuses on maintaining his dignity within whatever system exists. The digital revolutionary says, we must destroy big tech. The digital rebel says, I will engage with big tech consciously, on my own terms.
So which approach do you favor?
Both have their place, but I am always more interested in the rebel. Revolutions promise to solve the problem of absurdity, but absurdity cannot be solved. only embraced. The rebel understands this. He doesn't waste energy trying to create a perfect system. He focuses on living authentically within an imperfect one.
Your most famous line about Sisyphus is, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy." This seems almost offensive to people struggling with social media addiction, digital overwhelm, the anxiety of constant connectivity. How do we imagine the scroller happy?
This is the heart of it, isn't it? The scroller's happiness cannot come from the content of their scroll. That way lies madness, because the content is infinite and ultimately meaningless. Their happiness must come from the scrolling itself, from their conscious participation in the absurd.
But people report feeling miserable after scrolling sessions. They described it as a dopamine hit, followed by emptiness, anxiety, regret. How do we reconcile that with your vision of happiness?
Because they are seeking meaning in the wrong place. They scroll hoping to find something that will complete them, fulfill them, give their life purpose. But the absurd man knows that completion is impossible. The happiness comes from accepting the incompleteness.
That sounds almost Buddhist. The acceptance of impermanence, the letting go of attachment.
Perhaps, but I prefer to stay grounded in the Mediterranean sun. The scroller's happiness is not the serene detachment of the mystic, but the passionate engagement of someone who loves life precisely because it offers no ultimate satisfaction.
How would this look practically? What would a happy scroller actually do differently?
They would scroll with presence instead of absence. They would notice what they're feeling as they scroll, the small spike of interest, the flicker of envy, the moment of connection, the wave of boredom. They would experience their scrolling instead of being consumed by it.
With what you called lucid indifference.
Exactly. Not cold indifference, but lucid, clear-eyed, conscious indifference to the outcome. Scroll because you choose to scroll, not because you expect to find anything in particular. Engage because engagement is a form of life, not because you believe it will lead somewhere.
But doesn't this risk becoming nihilistic? If nothing matters, why do anything?
Never. This is the most common misunderstanding of absurdism. Nihilism says nothing matters, period. Absurdism says nothing matters ultimately, but everything matters immediately. Your scroll session doesn't contribute to cosmic meaning, but it is your scroll session, happening in your life, in this moment. That gives it all the meaning it needs.
Can you help me understand the difference between immediate and ultimate meaning?
Consider a sunset. Ultimately, it's just light refracting through atmospheric particles. It has no cosmic significance, but immediately, in the moment you're watching it, it can be beautiful, moving, even transcendent. The absurd man doesn't need the sunset to mean something beyond itself. Its immediate reality is enough.
So social media post can be meaningful in the moment, even if it has no lasting significance?
Absolutely. A funny meme that makes you laugh, a friend's photo that sparks genuine joy, a piece of news that helps you understand the world a little better. These have immediate meaning. The problem comes when we expect them to have ultimate meaning, when we scroll hoping to find the post that will change our life forever.
What about the social comparison aspect? Social media seems designed to make us compare ourselves to others, often unfavorably.
But comparison is also absurd. You are comparing your inner experience to others' curated presentations. You are comparing your messy, complex reality to their polished, filtered fragments. The absurd man laughs at this comparison because he recognizes its fundamental impossibility.
Laughs at it?
Yes, there is humor in absurdity. When I see a perfectly curated Instagram life, I don't feel envy, I feel amused. Here is someone trying to solve the problem of existence through photography. It's touching in a way. We are all trying to make our lives look meaningful, even when we know they're not.
This connects to your essay on suicide, where you wrote that the only serious philosophical problem is whether life is worth living. In our digital age, Do you think people are asking this question more or less?
More, but in a distorted way. Instead of asking, is life worth living, they ask, is my life worth posting? Instead of confronting the fundamental absurdity of existence, they try to cure it through likes, shares, comments. They seek existential validation through digital metrics.
And this doesn't work?
How could it? The metrics are infinite and arbitrary. There is always someone with more followers, more likes, more engagement. It's Sisyphean in the worst way. You push the boulder of your online presence up the mountain, only to watch it roll back down with the next algorithm change.
So what is the alternative?
Post because you choose to post. Share because you choose to share. Engage because you choose to engage. But don't expect these actions to solve the problem of existence. They are simply part of living, like eating or walking or breathing.
You wrote about the need to create our own values in an absurd universe. This seems especially challenging in a digital world designed to manipulate our attention and shape our behavior. How do we create authentic values when the platforms are constantly trying to tell us what to value?
This is perhaps the greatest challenge of your era. These platforms don't just capture attention, they shape values through the very act of capturing attention. They teach us to value the quick over the slow, the sensational over the subtle, the immediately gratifying over the genuinely satisfying.
So, our digital habits are creating us as much as we are creating them?
Absolutely. But here's the crucial point. Once we recognize this, we can choose differently. We can decide that a long, thoughtful conversation is more valuable than a clever tweet. We can choose depth over breadth, quality over quantity, presence over productivity.
But the platforms reward the opposite behaviors. The algorithm promotes posts that generate quick engagement, not necessarily meaningful engagement.
Let them. The absurd man is not concerned with external rewards. He creates his own values through his choices. If you choose to post something thoughtful, knowing it will get fewer likes than a meme, you are creating value through that choice.
This sounds incredibly difficult. You are essentially asking people to swim against the current of the entire digital economy.
Of course it is. If it were easy, everyone would do it. The creation of authentic values has always required courage, discipline, and most importantly, the willingness to be misunderstood.
What would these digital values look like in practice?
They would be personal, chosen, and consciously maintained. For example, you might value genuine conversation over viral content. You might choose to share your failures as well as your successes. You might prioritize listening over speaking, asking questions over giving answers.
But how do we know if our values are authentic or just another form of digital performance?
By their effects on your inner life. Authentic values create inner consistency, even when they create outer conflict. Performance values create inner conflict, even when they create outer success.
Can you elaborate on that?
If you post something because you genuinely want to share it, you feel integrated whether it gets 10 likes or 10,000. If you post something because you think it will perform well, you feel anxious about the metrics regardless of the outcome.
What about the social aspect? These platforms are supposed to connect us, but many people report feeling more isolated than ever.
They can connect us, but only if we approach them with authentic intention. Most social media interaction is what I might call solidarity of the scrolling. We are united in our mutual distraction, not in genuine human connection.
What would genuine digital connection look like?
It would involve vulnerability, not just curation. It would include questions, not just statements. It would acknowledge doubt, not just certainty. True digital solidarity would be using these tools to deepen real relationships, to have conversations that matter, to share not just our successes but our struggles, our questions, our fears.
But vulnerability online can be dangerous. People get cancelled, doxxed, harassed.
Yes, And this is where courage comes in. The absurd man knows that authentic living always involves risk, but he also knows that inauthentic living involves a different kind of risk, the risk of never really living at all.
How do we balance authenticity with safety?
By choosing our vulnerabilities consciously. You don't have to share everything with everyone, but you can share something real with someone. The key is that the choice comes from your values, not from fear or the desire for approval.
This brings up an interesting question about the digital privacy. In your time, privacy was largely a given. Now, surveillance capitalism has made privacy almost impossible. How does this affect our ability to live authentically?
It makes it more necessary, not less. When someone is watching, the temptation is to perform. But the absurd man performs only for himself. He acts according to his values regardless of who might be watching.
Even if who is watching is a massive corporation collecting data to manipulate his behavior?
Especially then, the corporation can collect your data, but it cannot collect your consciousness. It can track your clicks, but it cannot track your thoughts. It can influence your behavior, but it cannot control your choice to be aware of that influence.
So consciousness is the ultimate privacy?
In a sense, yes. Your inner life remains your own, no matter how much of your outer life is surveilled. This is why the development of inner values is so crucial. They create a space of freedom that no external power can touch.
I want to talk about one of the most insidious aspects of digital life, the constant interruption. Notifications, alerts, the persistent sense that we might be missing something. How does this relate to your philosophy of time and attention?
This is fascinating. You have created a technological version of what Nietzsche called the eternal return, but instead of the same life repeating infinitely, you have the same interruption repeating infinitely. The notification that promises something new, but delivers only the familiar anxiety of disconnection.
The fear of missing out, FOMO, has become a defining characteristic of digital life.
But what are we afraid of missing? Usually nothing in particular. We fear missing something, but we cannot name what that something is. This is absurdity in its purest form, a fear with no object, a desire with no destination.
So the notification is like a false alarm for meaning.
Exactly. Each buzz, each ping, each red dot promises that this might be the message that changes everything, but it never is. It's always just another piece of information, another fragment of someone else's life, another item to consume and forget.
So how do we break this cycle?
By recognizing that there is nothing to miss. Or rather, by recognizing that what we're really afraid of missing is life itself. But life is not in the notification. Life is in the moment between notifications, in the space of uninterrupted attention.
But what about genuine, urgent communications? What if someone really needs to reach us?
Then they will find a way. Humans communicated urgent information for thousands of years before push notifications. The truly urgent is rare, but our technology treats everything as urgent. This is another form of absurdity, the infinite inflation of importance.
You are suggesting we should turn off notifications?
I'm suggesting we should choose our notifications consciously. Ask yourself, does this notification serve my values, or does it serve someone else's business model? Most notifications are designed to capture your attention for commercial purposes, not to enhance your life.
What about the argument that constant connectivity makes us more efficient, more productive?
Efficient at what? Productive of what? These are the questions that matter. If you are efficiently consuming content and productively generating anxiety, then yes, constant connectivity is very effective. But if you value deep thought, genuine relationships, creative work, then constant interruption is the enemy.
This actually connects to your writing about the importance of leisure, of contemplation.
Yes, the absurd man needs time to think, to feel, to simply be. But your digital world has eliminated boredom, eliminated silence, eliminated the empty spaces where reflection can occur. Everything is filled with stimulation, with input, with the demand for response.
Is boredom necessary for human flourishing?
Absolutely. Boredom is the mind's natural state of openness. When we're bored, we're available for genuine experience, for unexpected thoughts, for the subtle movements of our inner life. But your phones have made boredom impossible. The moment we feel unstimulated, we reach for the device.
So we are losing the capacity for what you might call productive emptiness?
Beautiful phrase. Yes, we need emptiness the way we need sleep. Not the emptiness of depression or despair, but the emptiness of possibility, of readiness, of attention without object.
How do we cultivate this in a world of constant stimulation?
By choosing emptiness as consciously as we choose fullness. Set aside time for nothing. Sit without stimulation. Walk without podcasts. Eat without scrolling. Let your mind wander without immediately capturing its wanderings in notes or photos.
But doesn't this risk missing out on valuable information, important connections?
What could be more valuable than your own consciousness? What could be more important than your own capacity for genuine experience? We have become so afraid of missing external information that we miss our own inner life.
This raises a question about multitasking, which our digital tools seem to encourage.
Multitasking is a myth. The mind can only attend to one thing at a time. What we call multitasking is actually rapid task switching, which fragments our attention and prevents deep engagement with anything.
So the feeling of being busy and productive while multitasking is illusory?
Completely illusory. You feel busy because you are busy, constantly switching between tasks, constantly starting and stopping, constantly reorienting your attention, but you are not productive in any meaningful sense. You are just busy.
What would single tasking look like in our digital age?
It would look like choosing one thing and doing it fully. When you read, read. When you write, write. When you talk to someone, talk to them. When you scroll, scroll. But do it consciously, with full attention, for a chosen period of time.
This sounds almost meditative.
All conscious activity is meditative. The difference is not between meditation and non-meditation, but between awareness and unawareness. You can scroll meditatively, or wash dishes meditatively, or have a conversation meditatively. The key is presence.
As we wrap up our conversation, I want to return to our concept of rebellion. You wrote that the rebel is a man who says no. In our digital age, what should we be saying no to?
We should say no to unconsciousness, no to the assumption that faster is better, that more is better, that constant connectivity is better. No to the idea that our worth is measured by our metrics, our productivity, our online presence.
But we should also say yes to something.
Yes to conscious choice. Yes to the possibility of authentic engagement with technology. Yes to the idea that we can live fully in a digital world without being consumed by it.
What would you say to someone who feels trapped by their digital habits?
First, recognize that you are trapped. That recognition is already a form of freedom. Then, begin to make small, conscious choices. Choose to put your phone down during meals. Choose to read an entire article before sharing it. Choose to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively.
These seem like small acts.
All meaningful change begins with small acts. Each small choice is a tiny revolt against the algorithms that seek to control you. Over time, these small revolts accumulate into a transformed relationship with technology.
And if we fail, if we find ourselves scrolling mindlessly again,
Then we notice the failure, accept it, and choose again. The absurd man does not expect perfection. He expects only the opportunity to choose, and that opportunity is always available in every moment, with every click.
What about the larger social implications? If everyone followed your philosophy, what would happen to our digital culture?
It would become more human, more conscious, more authentic. The platforms would have to adapt to serve conscious users rather than unconscious ones. The whole system would shift toward genuine value rather than mere attention capture.
Do you think this is possible?
I think it's inevitable. Consciousness is contagious. When one person begins to engage authentically with technology, it gives others permission to do the same. The change spreads, slowly but surely.
Any final wisdom for our listeners?
Remember that the scroll is infinite, but your attention is not. The feed is meaningless, but your choices are not. The algorithm is absurd, but your consciousness is not. Push your digital boulder with full awareness. Walk back to your screen with clear eyes. And remember, in a world of infinite content, the most radical act is to choose what deserves your finite attention.
Monsieur Camus, as you return to whatever Mediterranean beach awaits in the afterlife, thank you for reminding us that consciousness is the ultimate form of rebellion.
The scroll will never end, but each scroll is a choice. Make it consciously, make it your own, and if you must scroll forever, scroll with joy.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Conversations with the Great Dead. Next time, we will summon Blaise Pascal, French philosopher and mathematician, to talk about artificial intelligence and consciousness. Until then, remember, the dead may be gone, but their wisdom lives on in every conscious choice we make. Choose well. This episode was inspired by Albert Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus and contemporary discussions of digital wellness and conscious technology use.